And thank you for voting for my talk. I really, really appreciate it, and I hope you will like it. And yeah, I'm Gregor Martynus. I'm GR2M on Twitter and on GitHub. And this is me questioning the status quo since 1984, just like Jan did in his talk before. And I also think that this picture summarizes really, really well what my talk is going to be about, because it's about all the constraints that we take as given and why it really makes sense to question every single one of them every day. Just like because someone tells me I cannot walk, doesn't mean I can't do it with a little trick, right? And that's my mom, and she told me so you better listen up. But don't worry, this is not going to be about my mom because she doesn't care about backend, really. But we still do, and I think it's time to change that. One question before I start to get a feeling. Who of you is a front-end developer guy? Who of you is into user experience and stuff? That's okay. And who of you would rather consider himself as a back-end only guy? Sorry, that was okay. Very, very good. Thank you very much for that. And I think that we, and now I speak especially as a front-end developer, I think we should focus on what we really enjoy to do and what we are really, really good at, which is creating a user experience and kind of the design, what's facing the user of our apps. Because after all, this is what makes our apps unique to the users. And the good news is that 2013, I say, is the year we can actually stop thinking about the backend. So stop thinking about the backend. I will tell you what I mean by that with an example. By Chris Collier. Who knows Chris Collier from CSS Tricks? Oh yeah, he's one hero of mine, and I thought about making an example app with to-dos, which is usually done because everyone understands the concept, and instead I wanted to give a little homage on Chris Collier. So what Chris did back in 2009 is he made an HTML application for invoices. So you could open it in your browser, you can edit all the fields, you can add a new row, you can change the numbers, and it does all the math for you, right? And once you're done, you're happy with the result, you can print it out, and it has some decent print CSS, so you can print it out and send it then to your client. And it's all about it because it's an HTML app, right? So it doesn't have user accounts. You cannot access the data you put in here on a different browser, or you cannot export the current page to PDF, or you cannot, receive payments of your users. But still, it's a very, very nice thing to do because me, as a front-end developer, understands the entire technology that's behind it. I can take the HTML and the CSS and the JavaScript, put it on my own server, just change the styles, replace the logo, and I have my own custom-looking invoicing app, right? So what we did now is to kind of showcase what I mean by no backend. We took it, we a little bit 2013ified it a little bit, so it looks a little bit more fancy, but it's still very much the same application. So it uses most of it, still the same code. You can edit all the fields and you can add new rows, and it still does the math for you. And then the first thing we did was that when you actually reload the page, and right now I will open it in a second tab, when you reload the page, your data will be persistent. And then the next thing that we've added are these 3 buttons on the bottom right, which actually now lets you add more than one invoice at a time. So you can add a new invoice and change the data, and then you can switch between your existing invoices, and you can delete an invoice and stuff like that. So very typical, very standard functionality, and so far, so not impressive, right? Because, if you know HTML and you know JavaScript, you can use local storage to do just that. As long as you stay in your own in the same browser, it's not very hard to kind of make this stuff happen today. But where it becomes interesting is we've added sign up button on the bottom right, which now lets you sign in. And I'm not going to use that. Instead, I will show you the code in the console that is used to sign up for a new account. And it's just a method called sign up, and I pass a username and a password, and then I've created an account. And when I go back to the app now, it now says, hey, hello Gregor at martynus.net, and I see a sign out button. And to show you that this thing is actually real, I will open this page up in Firefox now, like in a different browser, and sign in with the credentials of the user account that I just created. And after a second, it will show me the data that I've just created in Chrome, now in my Firefox browser, right? And I can create another invoice for Firefox and give it an invoice number, and then again switch back to my Chrome browser. And it will show me the data that I've now put into the other browser, the Firefox browser. And I can switch between the Firefox invoice and the invoice that I did before, right? And your local storage cannot do that yet. And just to make a little exercise. So the next feature we've added is an export feature. Like I want to download the current invoice to PDF. Now just don't try to forget all the constraints that your browser has as a sandboxing system, and just imagine what would be the nicest code you could come up with to make a feature work to export the current invoice to PDF. Just think of the most beautiful piece of JavaScript that could make export the current page to PDF. So what I came up with is, or what I actually want as a front-end developer, I just want to have a convert method available. And I want to pass a DOM element to this convert method. And then I want to convert my DOM element to pass in a file name. And because of the file name extension, like the magic behind this code understands, okay, you want to export this current page to PDF or to PNG or to JPEG or whatever. And to make this more interesting, I mean, nothing happens with that yet, right? But what I want actually is I want to export the current page to PNG, and when the conversion is done, I want to download it. So I get the standard dialog to download the current page, and what you see now is my blah blah, my blah blah invoice that I've just exported with this 3 lines of code, right? So the next thing, the next feature that we've added is actually sending the current invoice as an email. And that's quite simple because you can use the mail to protocol, right? So you can just set location craft to mail to and an email address, and it will open up my email client that I've configured on my system. And I can also pass attributes to it. I can set the subject and the body and CC and whatsoever. But the problem with this approach is it's very, very hard to make this compatible with all the different platforms and all the different clients that can be configured. And also, not everyone has an email client configured today on his OS, like on a shared computer. So what I want instead is this. Just give me a send email method in my browser. And I want to pass in attributes like a subject and a text and the recipient to this method. And I want it to send an email. And I don't want to worry about the configured email client on the operating system. It should just work. And when I have that, I can very simply add another attribute, HTML, to actually send a multi-part email right from my browser. And this you cannot do with the mail to protocol, right? So now it takes a second, and you see it sends too many emails. It's a little bit buggy. But hey, this is the text representation, and the second one will show you the HTML version, which is very ugly. But you see there is a table, so it's an HTML email that I just sent from my browser. And now when you just combine the send email method With the convert method that I had before, you can actually send multi-part emails with attachments right from the browser. And who said that this is not possible today? Because I think it's really time to question the constraints that we just got used to. And there is a lot of magic behind it, but this is working today. So why? I just claim that we should not take it as given when someone says we cannot send this kind of emails from the browser. So what you see here is my HTML email, and attached is the result of the conversion that I passed into the attachments array. This is a very good example of what I call no backend. Because the front-end API is what I care about. Everything that's behind kind of the curtain of the JavaScript code is not unique to my app. Like sending an email is not unique to my invoicing app. I could use the same for my note-taking app or for my to-do list app whatsoever. All I care about is what's unique to my app, and I want to have everything, like all the rest, abstracted away if it's repetitive. And also, the complexity behind this code can be very high or very low. It can also work differently for different browsers. For example, Chrome today can create screenshots in the browser. IE cannot do it. So, for example, when I convert the current page to PNG, Chrome does it right away using Canvas and magic stuff. And for the IE, instead, I would gather the HTML, I would get the CSS, I would send it to some server, wait until he converts it to a PNG, then receive the response of it, and then send it back to my user. But still, it would have the same API. And that's what I care about. I don't care if it takes a millisecond or 10 seconds to finish. I just want this to be very, very simple. Because this is very, very empowering for me to build apps very, very fast. Because I can focus on what's really unique to my own applications. There was a time before no backend when it was right, when the people said you cannot do it, like this is not working in the browser. And I just want to compare the two different approaches, like how we build applications today and how I think we should build at least certain kind of applications starting tomorrow. So when we take the invoicing app from Chris Collier as an example, he started with an idea, right? And then he turned it into an HTML application, like a static application, which already worked. Like you can edit all the fields, you can print it out, you can already use it to create your invoices and send to a customer. But if Chris would have decided to make it an actual product that others can use, he would need to have some backend logic to it, right? So either he would do it himself, which is absolutely capable to do, like he can do PHP, he just doesn't want to do it. It's not his profession, it's not what he is passionate about. Instead, he would, I guess, find like a backend guy he would work together with. So he would say like, hey, I need to send emails, I need to make file conversions, and I want to have accounts. So this is what like the backend developer would get, and then he would like disappear, I guess, for some time. And after a week or two, he would come back and say like, hey, this is my RESTful API. Like, this is how you can access the backend magic now. So Chris would take this and wire it up with some jQuery Ajax methods or whatever library you want to use. And then after it's wired, you can deploy a first version of your application to actually gather user feedback on it. And the interesting thing is like, there is no single app that I've been involved in that launched as like a free beta, which already had payments implemented. It's kind of dictated by the backend. Even if you wanted to start charging for it right away, you couldn't, because like the idea of like getting your product out there very, very fast is you don't want to wait to get it all done. You want to get out as fast as possible. So you launch it and you don't have payments implemented. So here they would launch the free beta, they would gather some user feedback, and at some point they would figure out, okay, people are actually willing to pay for it. All they want is uploads because they want to customize, like they want to have branded invoices. And so the backend guy has to do uploading and he has to do payments, and then at some point you will have the final product that you can actually start charging for. Now, when we compare this design process of creating an app traditionally, like we do it today, with no backend, the difference is that, or like we start the same way. You have the idea and you create, as a front-end person, you create a prototype with all the UI already in that you can use today. The difference, though, is that there is no backend. Like, there is no one that you need to create like a PHP or Ruby or Java or whatever backend that makes like this typical stuff work for you. And there is no RESTful API, and there is no Java. There's no like Ajax wiring. Indeed, when you have the right backend solutions that does not exist today, but I'm sure it will soon, they will give you payment right away. So you have your idea, you build your product over the weekend, and you can start charging on it on Monday if you want to. Like, it might still make sense to say, like, hey guys, this is for free, just give it a try, I want to gather feedback. But it's not because of the constraints of the backend that still needs to be built, it's because of you deciding this is the right thing to do. So this is the difference between no backend and the way we build apps today, and I want to invite you to discuss it on a website I've set up. It's nobackend.org. And if you have like feedback or ideas or whatever, use the no backend hash. I'm monitoring it. And I really want to kick off discussion about the concept of no backend, because technically it's happening already today. There are some solutions that you can use today to make this work. Also, business-wise, this is very, very big already, especially in the mobile sector. There's a lot of money involved already because they understand that all the developers, especially for mobile apps, are willing to pay big money if we offer a service, like a backend as a service, to take away the pain from them. But what I'm missing right now when looking at the solution, they are not very driven by the expectations of the front-end developers. And what my goal is to create a demand and to make them understand that the best API is actually the most important feature for us to use. So when you go on a website, it's not very fancy yet. I'm working on it, and you're happy to help me out. It's all on GitHub. But there are three main things on this website. The first one is Dreamcode, which I will come back to in a second. The second one is Examples, which is the invoicing app that I've just shown you, and there is a pull request for a second example app. And the idea behind example apps is the same kind of that motivated the people behind To-Do MVC. Do you know To-Do MVC? So I want to have this invoicing app as a very, very simple showcase, and then have different backend solutions to implement the same thing. So you as front-end developer can just go there and compare the code and to figure out like, hey, this API is way nicer, why don't you do it? And also give, make the APIs comparable for the providers of these no backend solutions to get inspiration to improve their APIs. And the third one is actual solutions, and I want to go through some of them right now. And the first one is remote storage. Have you heard of remote storage? Okay, quite a few. This is super, super cool because it's literally separating your application from the data of the user. Me as a user, I would download the invoicing app and then sign in not only with my user credentials, but also with a URL which defines my personal server. I have full control of my data. And if data synchronization and authentication is all you need for like your app, definitely give this a try. I think it's the most elegant solution. Next one is deployed. And there will be a talk tomorrow about deploy, which I'm very happy about because I tried to get in touch with them, but I didn't get to yet. They also offer like user accounts and data synchronization, but they also offer modules, which is actually all JavaScript. They use Node.js and MongoDB. So if there is like a feature missing, you as part of the community can create a solution for it. For example, like there is no convert like method right now, but you can go and build like the Node.js module that makes the magic work and provide it back because it's all open source, and then everyone can benefit from it. And they are around for quite a while now, and I think definitely worth checking out. Something that I'm very sad about, though, that I found out yesterday, is that they started to offer hosted, like a hosting for deployed apps, so that you don't have to worry about that at all as a front-end guy, but now they're shutting it down. And I don't know what's behind that, but I think this is very, very sad, because me as a front-end guy, I don't want to worry about backend, but especially I don't want to worry about hosting. Anyway, maybe there was some other guy, it's open source, so some other company can jump in and create a hosting service, or even multiple companies can start offering a hosting service for it. It's on us to make them understand that there is a demand. Next up is Firebase. Who knows Firebase? Oh, it's the same. Okay. So Firebase is super, super cool. And Firebase is not open source. It's a hosted service that you can use. And what they care about most is real time and scalability. And it's production ready today. Like there are production apps out there today that use Firebase as a backend. I think that, when you look at their API, like look at their documentation, it's not very nice. It's more like, okay, we have this backend, we have this technology, and we just make it available to you, to the front end. And I think they can go a little bit better on that, to like rather go from the other side, go from the target group perspective, and hide more of its complexity. Or somebody can just make a library on top of Firebase to make it nicer. Next one is Meteor. Who knows Meteor? All right. So this is not a no backend solution, how I think about it, but I don't want to own this term or something. I want to just kick off a discussion about it, but Meteor is not front-end only. You have to do the full stack. You have to do front-end and back-end. And it's very, very powerful because it gives you a lot of low-level control, even like pretty much access to your database in the front-end. So it's more complex, but it's also more powerful. And if you are not, if you are into backend, and you should definitely check it out if you haven't yet. Next up is Kinvey. Who knows Kinvey? Okay, so Kinvey comes from the mobile sector. Like what they started with already like 3 to 4 years ago is to offering especially for iOS and Android, the backend as a service. So you can just sign it up, and then they give you a nice library for your Objective-C, so that you can authenticate the users, and they give you like an admin interface for push notifications and stuff like that. So you can focus on your front-end UI, on your app, and everything you need for backend, they just provide you, and they have a fixed fee for that. There's also another company called Parse.com, which is very similar and also very, very good. And you can tell that they are around for a few years because they, for example, have very, very nice documentation and very nice admin interfaces. But what I like most about Kinvey is the process of actually me as a front-end guy creating a new app. I think this is what everyone should do. The first step is you just sign up with your email address and your password. Then you put in the name of the application you create, and then you're done. And all you get is a script tag, just like Google Analytics or whatsoever, that you put into your HTML app, and all the magic APIs is just available to you. So this is what's possible today. So we should make like the guys that can do stuff like that understand that there is a high demand for it. I'm just here to show you that this is actually possible. And what's also very cool is when you do like backend as a service technology, you can not only provide the nice APIs, but you can also out of the box provide a nice user interface that shows you like statistics about your users, about the payments you received, about their data, about whatever, like how many emails have been sent. You can upgrade accounts and all the stuff with a nice user interface. And then there is Hoodie. Who knows Hoodie? Oh, nice. So Hoodie is the one that I'm involved with Jan and also Kalen, and Alex, who is not here, and Lena from Berlin. And you will recognize like the API a little bit, because Hoodie is what I used to wire up the invoicing app in the beginning. And there are some other APIs, for example, Store, that lets me like add new invoices and update them and remove them, and which also makes sure that when I'm authenticated, I find the invoice that I created on Firefox also on my Chrome. And then you can like listen to events. So you can listen on synchronization events. For example, when you change the invoice on your mobile phone, you can make the changes appear on your desktop browser and whatsoever. And there are a lot of modules that you already created. For example, the share module, which is one of the more complex ones, which is, it lets you specifically share specific data with specific people. So for example, I could share my invoice and all the items with only my client, and only he has access to it. Or I could share like all invoices for a certain company with 3 other people and also give them write rights to it. So I can grant write access and stuff like that. And this is also how we started Hoodie. This is what we call dream code. Before we even started to implement the very, very first line of code, we thought a lot about like how would the most beautiful kind of JavaScript, how would JavaScript look like that feels most natural to front-end developers to do like these typical back-end stuff. So all these sign-ups and store methods and also the share or the email methods, they all started as what we call dream code, just to describe what it does and to talk to a lot of front-end developers to say like, hey, do you understand this? What do you think about it? Does it make sense to you? Is it the way you would like to interact with this like magic stuff that you want to read, that you don't want to care about really? And I want to go a little bit more into this because I think dream code is super cool for many reasons. But the main reason is, in this context, that everyone can do dream code. Like every JavaScript developer, for example, can do dream code. And even if you are a beginner, you can even do better dream code than all the senior guys, because we all are like, we already know all the constraints and we think in our constraints. So when you have like a new guy say like, hey, I want to send an email, I want to do it like this. And usually you would react like laughing and say like, no, dude, this is not possible, right? But instead, it's actually a very, very nice input because it seems to be the most natural way how things should work today. And I want you to dream code because in the context of no backend, I think it's the best input that we can provide to that we can kind of create for the providers of no backend solutions to make them understand like, hey, this is what I want. And this is very, very empowering for me. And if we create a demand that is high enough, they will listen. And if they don't, we can add like a friendly but concise shut up and take my money, and then they will listen, for sure, right? So, dream code. It has always 2 aspects to it. The first one is the context, so like it describes the use case that I want to do, and the second one is the actual code to accomplish the task. So this is like the dream code that we came up with 1 year ago to sign up a new user and then to react on was it successful or not. The same, for example, to reset the password. And this is one of my favorite. Like resetting a password is the same freaking thing since 15 years, since I do web apps. Like no matter what, it's always the same stuff. So why do we re-implement it all the time? I understand that there is some complexity to it, especially like, okay, what do I want? I want to reset my password. For me as a user, it's super simple. Like here's my email address, send me a new password or send me a link that I can reset it. And in the backend, it's actually quite complex, right? Because you have to understand, okay, there is a request to reset a password for an account. And then I create a token that can only be used once to reset this specific password. And I have to send out an email with this token to this user and blah, blah, blah. I understand this is complex, but you can hide this behind such JavaScript code. So just do it. Next one is, I want to save a new invoice. And so the API that we came up with is, I want to have the add method on my store module and pass in the type of the object that I store, and then the second one, just the object itself, just the properties. I don't want to care about schema. I don't want to care about validations at first. I just want you to store what I have here and to give it to me wherever I'm signed in as the user. And when I want to share like a new invoice, I want to add it to my store and I want to share it. And then when the share is done, I want to display like the public URL to it or the secret URL to my user so he can like send it to his client. Then I want to export the current page to PDF. So this is what I've used for the invoicing app, right? I pass in a DOM element, and then I convert it to a file name. And then because of the file name, because of the extension, the backend behind it understands what like kind of file type I want to download. But I could use the same syntax, for example, to instead pass in a string, which happens to be a URL. So the magic backend, again, understands like, oh, it's not a DOM element, it's a string. Oh, it matches like my URL regex. So actually I understand he wants me to visit like exam.pl and make a screenshot of it and then send it back to the user. And then my favorite, send email. This is more complex. There is more like code, but I think there is not a single character that you could remove from this code and still maintain its functionality. So this is super powerful. And usually, this is also a good example on what the first reaction is. Like, the first reaction when people see this is, what are you going to do with spam? Like, so everyone can go to this website and just send emails, and like, just, you know, what are you thinking about it? And my answer to this is, yes, you're right. Spam is a problem, but it's not a problem of the front-end API. Spam is a problem that, especially the back-end guys, are very, very good in to handle it. They're doing it since years. So they can put all kind of magic logic in the back-end, stuff like, hey, you cannot send an email before you sign up for an account, or you cannot send more emails than 5 per minute, or something like that. I understand that there is some danger to it, but it does not need to make the front-end API more complex. These are two different things. So next up, one more experiment. Are you still awake? So imagine you have a web shop and you want your users to be able to purchase a product on your web shop. Now, how would this code look like? Just think about it for a second, and I have another drink. So what I came up with is, I want to have a purchase method that I pass in the reference to this product, and then I want to purchase it with, and then pass in properties that describe my credit card information. And this is it. And I understand like the first feedback, and it's right, I shouldn't use with because it's a reserved JavaScript word, right? So we should rename this. But that's the discussion that's already happening about it. So that's really cool. We should rename it. I understand. I agree. But the cool thing is when you have an API, and for me, like jQuery, this is like the good parts of jQuery. You can pass different kind of attributes to it, and they do different kind of stuff with it. So for example, here, instead of an object passing in credit card information, I could pass in a string, which is the name of a third party that I want to use to make the purchase. So I could use like PayPal or Amazon or Google or whatever, and would do the same thing. This is my dream API for that. So next up, Chris did his invoicing app, and now he wants to allow people to upgrade their account to a pro account and pay for it. So the code that I want to have for that is, I want to have an upgrade to method on my account and pass in the name of the plan I want to upgrade to. And I want this method to return kind of my intention to upgrade my account. And I want to pass in this intention to the purchase method and use the same API again to do the payment with it. I want coffee, like I really do. So, hey device at IP 192.168.1.3, please make me a coffee and wake me up when you're done. And this is this is kind of related to what Jan said about democratizing the technology. Like we, the people here, who can kind of work between, for example, the APIs that these devices offer, like the Nodecopter, and the guys who actually have a lot of ideas what they want to do with it. And we can work as the middleman. And we can make such APIs to empower a lot of more people to do applications with it. If this API would exist for a coffee machine, I promise you it takes a month. And then there are like all kinds of crazy applications out there using this coffee machine. And we are capable to creating this ecosystem for it. And by that, we democratize technology. Just think about it. Let's say today, maybe 2 out of 1,000 people in our society would be able to make an application with this coffee machine. And now imagine 500 people could do it out of 1,000. Not because they are doing it today, but they understand like, hey, this is so simple, I will learn it. So I have 5 minutes left. But this is me and I'm done. So in a nutshell, what I really want you to take out of this talk is, not only for no backend, but in general, question all the constraints. And dream code, dream big, and don't worry about it. Be always happy, and thank you. And thanks, Mama.